I still remember walking around the city, and this is after having been here for about 10 years, walking around the city and going, I never, ever want to leave San Francisco. It was the, first time, and I'd been reading some history about San Francisco at that point, but that was like that feeling of like, this is your home now.
That was Lester Raww, frontman of the Pine Box Boys. I'm Jeff, and this is Storied San Francisco, a podcast all about the artists, activists, and small businesses that make this city what it is. Welcome to part 2 with Lester and his wife, Anita. They're the focus of our Valentine's 2024 episode. This is another long one like part 1 was. In this podcast, we hear about the couple's move to San Francisco and all they've been doing in the city since 1994. Here's the conclusion of my conversation with Anita Beshirs and Lester Raww.
Like, it was just a flood. I mean, it was like I could not have planned it. I could not. I really had talked to myself.
We made out that night, didn't we?
Did.
Yeah.
That was it. Like, the minute I saw him, I'm like, I have missed you so much. And then we got together, ditched Randy.
Wait, I have to ask, though, based on this story and everything that's led up to this moment of y'all getting... Who made the first move?
Really? I think you did.
Yes! They're pointing at each other.
And Lisa Schroeder, you came and you were hanging
over.
around.
Yeah, we broke out of the dorm and came back over, didn't we?
But I do remember, I had told Anita,
I know you kissed me first, and I said, don't do this, you're going to ruin our whole relationship.
Friendship, yeah.
And,
you kissed me
but
first.
I had told you, but then you came back over with Lisa. You're right, yeah, okay, yeah. Then,
kiss and go.
She needed a little more lip action, from the boy.
So from that point, I think I actually dated both of you guys for a couple of months.
There was some of that, and I remember telling you that it was like, you might as well dump him because, you're going to be mine,
Yes.
And I was like, yeah, right. Well, and then sure enough, no one even knew we were together, really. Mm-hmm. And so then when I dumped Randy, now I remember the real story. Our parents can never listen to this. I thought I was pregnant.
Please do tell. Yes.
I thought I was pregnant because I always thought I was pregnant.
Okay.
Because that's that era of time. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, if you're pregnant, would you marry me? Mm-hmm. And I was like, what? Mm-hmm. And I was like, I think I would, actually. And I wasn't. I wasn't, but then...
And when she found out she wasn't, then it was kind of like, well... But I still want to marry you.
You already said you would.
I asked her.
He actually said that. He goes, you already said you would marry me.
Yep,
so.
Yep. She toyed with me a little bit, No. Oh, I'm kidding, So
we were 22 years old.
Okay.
And
92.
We just decided.
No, 90.
90.
Yep. Sorry, 90.
We were like, yeah, you're my person. And we just knew we were each other's person. Mm-hmm. And he had one more semester to go. So it was kind of just like convenience. We couldn't live together because he was still in school and we'd get kicked out for that.
You had a semester longer than her?
Yeah, because he changed his,
Because I switched, and also because I was getting a teaching credential.
Right.
So, that was just, and it's kind of embedded, over there. But anyway, so...
and did you stay around?
Well, yeah, because we got married.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It was horrible.
But I also dropped out of college. Okay.
No, he flunked out of college.
You can't flunk out of college. What you can do is fail your foreign language requirement class, and then just decide you're not going back. So
he was 3 hours shy of his degree.
This is one of my recurring nightmares is getting to that point, and they're like, "You're 3 short."
Right.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah.
I just, and I was trying to get it done in a hurry. I'd been taking French classes, and I had done Spanish in high school. So I was like, I'm going to double up. I'm going to do, a semester of French and Spanish at the same time. Mm-hmm. I still remember getting back the French final and the professor writing on there, your Spanish isn't too bad. I couldn't
teacher with a good sense of humor.
At this point, we're already married. And we're living in a duplex in this horrible town. I'd already graduated. There's no jobs.
Mm-hmm.
So,
what is the town, by the way?
Searcy, Arkansas.
Yeah.
Searcy?
Searcy.
Searcy.
It's about 45 minutes
need
north
to look
of
it
Little
up.
Rock.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to be there in 2 weeks.
Okay.
For the first time. And yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Okay.
It's freaking me out.
But also at that time, I had started my first serious band, like
Yes.
where I was writing music for it.
The Cosmic
and,
Giggle Factory.
Yeah, Cosmic Giggle Factory was the name of the band.
Cosmic Giggle Factory.
A Robert Anton Wilson reference.
Oh, okay.
And it was like, man, what do I need with this stupid degree anyway? This is the era, like, you got on MTV, man, you were going to be huge.
Yep.
And we moved down to Little Rock, and
in like 90 or 91 now?
Yeah, so
probably was 91
my very
by the time we
first
moved
job
down
out
there.
of college, because there were no jobs in that town, was working at Captain D's Seafood Restaurant in the kitchen.
The
And
Long John Silver's competitor.
Yes.
Exactly.
Captain D's.
And not only
I'm from that part of the world. I know
advanced
this.
too quickly off of, I was supposed to only be doing the hush puppies for the first 2 weeks. This is after having a degree in journalism. And so then I advanced from the Captain D's to the local hotel where I saw all kinds of things I never needed to see in that town.
Swinger Central.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then he actually didn't graduate.
Mm-hmm.
And then he decided not to graduate, and then we moved. We just hopped right down to Little Rock.
Did your whole band move with you?
Oh yeah, we all
yeah.
moved to Little Rock. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And I started working in an alternative newspaper down there called Spectrum Weekly. We had a great community there.
Yeah.
And we still have friends there that we'll see in a couple of weeks. Like, we had a really strong, I always said, like, we always had the same kind of friends there that we have here. There were just less of them there. The communities are just smaller. Right. But we had, it was the best move for us. And we had 4 years there. And it was right when Clinton got elected for the first time. Yes. And he worked downtown in a pizza joint.
Do you remember The War Room? It's a documentary about Stephanopoulos and about James Carvell.
Yes.
I have a scene in there.
Yeah.
I'm in it. Yeah. And it's right at the day after the election. Carvell used to come in every single day. Mm-hmm. And he'd come in where? Into the restaurant I worked at.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I left that part out.
That's okay.
I worked in this little pizza joint, downtown, right near where they had their campaign headquarters.
Serving or cooking?
I was serving. Yeah. And
we lived on pizza.
Carvell would come in and
Raging Cajun.
He'd already had a few. By the time he came in.
I would expect.
And he wanted, we had the Budweiser and the ice cold. Our mug stayed in the freezer until you ordered that beer. And he always wanted that. So the day after the election, he comes in. We had some. We were the only place downtown that was selling beer that night, and so the owner had these some kegs of Busch beer that hadn't sold. So we were like 50-cent Busch beer. So my scene in there is me offering Carvell a Busch beer. He's like, Busch? Fuck that. Give me a Budweiser. Little Rock was fun. It was
Little Rock was fun.
And my whole thing about it is like we left Little Rock before we hated it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
It's
she
like
was
a big town.
Arkansas's Austin.
Yeah, there you go. All right, he brought it back around.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Arkansas's Austin. Mississippi just doesn't have an Austin, but I would say that Little Rock.
Some states do.
And you know what was really fun there? Like, I mean, there were scenes. There were, punk bands. There were metal bands. Mm-hmm. We just all went to each other's shows.
Right.
Everybody.
It wasn't cliquey or standoffish.
No. There wasn't enough of us to be cliquey.
Right.
No. At least it didn't feel that way to me. I mean, other people may have a different take on it, but the free press that she was working at closed down.
Spectrum Weekly. Yeah.
Band I was in broke up. And it was like, let's get out of here.
We knew we wanted to leave the South. We knew we didn't want to stay in the South. But we were having a good time, and the band was going, and we built a great community there, and it was the beginning of like building an arts and music community.
Did you know San Francisco right away, or
Nope.
how did that happen?
We've never been.
Let's get into the meat. Here we go.
We are just now moving to San Francisco, which is what this show is all about.
That's okay.
We had never been here. We had just decided that we wanted to move to an actual really, bigger city.
Like a city.
City. So it was LA, San Francisco, New York,
New Orleans,
Chicago, New Orleans.
Austin was on the list.
Austin,
for a while.
Boston.
Mm-hmm.
That's about it. That's what we were looking at. And back then, kids, there was no internet.
No.
So
I would go to the library and get out the 101 major metropolitan cities rated. And San Francisco, it said in there, 72 degrees, was the average temperature.
So it really did. He had a cousin who had lived
I
out
imagined
here.
72 degrees,
Every
sunny,
day.
every day. Yeah.
He had a cousin who, and we just started talking to everybody. Where have you lived? Where did you like? Where did you not like? What did you like and not like about it? No one had anything bad to say about San Francisco.
Right.
Like, there were, everywhere
Oh,
else.
how times have changed.
Oh, right.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, seriously. Like, it
Yep.
was just, and he had one cousin who had lived out here before the 89 earthquake, and she moved because of the 89 earthquake. She was down in the marina, and her building went,
Oh, that'll
and she
do
was
it.
like, I'm out.
Yeah.
And she was the one who...
But she was very encouraging.
Yeah, she was like, you
Yeah.
guys would love it there. I can completely see you living there. And that was kind of all it took. And I had one other friend that had moved out here that was my gay ex-boyfriend. And
So you didn't go visit any of these
No.
other places? You were just
I
like...
mean, we've been to New Orleans.
we didn't have money.
New Orleans, of course.
You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
We went
But
on our
right,
honeymoon
and-
in New Orleans, but we didn't have money. We couldn't
Right.
just go on these
Yeah,
trips.
right.
We were like, let's move to a city.
Let me ask a question, because maybe you were a little bit younger than I was when I moved here, but I know when I moved here, I had no idea that I would just stay. Like, possibly for the rest of my
I
life.
thought we would be here for 5 to 10 years.
Right, like you think
Yeah.
like, oh, if we like it,
5 to
it'll
10
be something
years.
like that.
You know, being a Navy kid, I was just kind of used to the fact that every few years you pack
Pick
up
up and move,
You
yeah.
know, so
And we were so young. We were, what, 26?
when we got here, 25, yeah.
25, 26?
And,
Okay.
and I still remember walking around the city, and this is after having been here for about 10 years, walking around the city and going, I never, ever want to leave San Francisco. It was the first time, and I'd been reading some history about San Francisco at that point, but that was like that feeling of like, this is your home now.
So about 10 years in.
Yeah.
When did it happen for you, Anita?
Well, I think we have an important part here of
Okay.
that when we mentally decided, San Francisco sounds pretty good, we still didn't have any money.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
That was possible.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
but that was
Not
when
now.
things, like, once we decided this was our destination, things just started falling into place. At that point, I was working with a producer who did fitness shows for ESPN.
Oh.
And so we went on site in St. George, Utah to film all the entire, you do entire seasons at one time.
Mm-hmm.
And the floor director there lived here.
Okay.
And I was like, that's great. We were actually thinking about moving out there. And he goes, well, my roommate's moving out like next month. If you guys want to come out,
Yeah.
you can just move in with me. And we were like, okay. And he lived up in Twin Peaks.
Right beneath the tower, right underneath
Oh,
Central
yeah.
Tower.
He lived up in Twin Peaks.
Good radio reception
And
up there.
so-
It makes crazy sounds at night.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
We basically...
Just the tower itself?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. We heard the bridge on the way over here doing it.
yeah, oh,
It's
yeah.
So cool.
I like that,
Me
personally.
too. I know. Noise pollution. So we, so we did. Like, I went back home. We scraped together everything we had. We sold everything out of our house. We packed up a 2-year-old boxer that was unfixed and a cat who was really cranky.
Oh.
And we had a little
My guitars,
Geo
my
Prism.
66 Fender Twin.
We shipped
yep.
maybe 3 boxes of like household stuff.
You can't hitch a trailer to a Prism.
We didn't.
Nope.
Everything in the car.
Everything
We
fit
actually,
in the car.
whatever we couldn't fit in the car the day we rolled out of town, we sold right then.
Mm-hmm.
We actually sold our TV because
So
we couldn't fit. We
you
sold.
did have some cash.
We probably had. I swear, I think we came out here with like $500. Like we had
Like
nothing.
to your name.
To our name.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we had enough
Combined.
For our, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
We had enough
94?
for our first month's rent.
Yep, November 94.
94. Holy
And then we immediately landed here, and he started working at Tower Records, and I just went to a temp agency.
I know. Tower. I was there. I lived the Tower thing.
And you got a job there right away?
Right
Pretty
away.
quick,
Well, because
yeah.
he worked at Peaches Records in Florida
I'd
years
done
in
record
high school.
stores plenty.
Okay.
You
So
know,
you had a
growing
resume.
up. Yeah.
He had a resume for Tower.
Yeah.
That's
Tower
amazing.
and pizza.
Hey,
That
you
was
know
his
what?
resume.
Back then, you didn't get a job at Tower Records if you didn't have a specialty.
Experience.
It's true.
Right? Yeah, you need to be like, okay, well, that's our hip hop guy, and this is the world music guy. And
Right.
This guy knows metal, and and I knew a lot of stuff, and so yeah.
And was this market
Stonestown.
Stonestown.
But
okay.
I mean, like, on inventory days, I worked at Castro. Got to spend a little time over at the classical annex. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And what did you do when you landed?
I just walked right into a temp agency, and they hired me to work there immediately because I'm a great worker. We both are really good. We have great work ethics, So, I did a couple years at the agency, and then I've done a bunch of different things.
I think we're at the point now where I would like to fast forward. I don't want to skip anything important, but
I don't think we need to.
We
talk
got a
about
lot
that.
here.
Yeah.
I definitely want to hear the, I guess, origin story of Pine Box Boys.
Sure. Yeah.
And I want to hear the origin story of you getting involved doing, well, I guess you've been doing art, but like your story of...
I wasn't for a long time.
Okay.
Like, I was not an artist. I was starting to toy around with being an artist when we were in Little Rock, but I was self-taught, just playing around, but I didn't take any of it seriously until really not that long ago. 2015 was my first show.
Let's dig into that. You'll go first.
Oh, okay. Fast forward after a series of academic and corporate jobs and a 10-year career in PR and all the stuff I hated. And 2015, Annie at Mini Bar gave me my first
Shout out to
show.
Annie.
Big shout out to Annie. Just talked to her this morning. And she gave me my first show. At that point, I had been renting a little studio space at my other friend's house up in the Haight. And I just had never known what to do with it, but I knew I had to do it. But I didn't think about showing it or anything like that.
No, but that's a form of calling.
Yeah.
Right?
I've always done stuff. I just
do it.
And then
And then
I'm like,
you figure out what to do with it.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm going to figure out how to paint. And then I would take a little class here or there, a drawing class or paint class, just here and there. But it's mostly just for my own mental health. And so Annie gave me my first show at Mini Bar, and that was 2015, and that's the same year I left PR for good.
Okay.
And that was when I started wanting to really get into it more. And so I had a show every year at Mini Bar for like 4 years.
Okay.
Because Annie would rotate a same artist every year. And so then that gave me reason to keep pushing my art and making more and trying different things and different mediums. Because every show is completely different. Like
Were they themed, or it's just the same artists?
It's just the same artist. She never had themes.
Yeah.
Like I did the theme. I
But
like the themes.
But that means you can do whatever, and you can push yourself.
So pretty much looking around here, there's probably pieces from every show I ever had. So my first show was more like assemblage pieces. My second show, I got into the pastels, the crows.
Oh, those are fun.
And I never picked that up again after that show.
Yeah.
And then, I always just, whenever I put a show together, it's just its own thing.
Yeah.
But I always thought I'm a terrible artist because I can't brand myself. Like nobody, I don't have a single look for everything I do. But yeah, that just expanded. And then I decided after I left PR, I had the dream of getting on the curating side. Again, I have no formal art education. And I always was I felt really intimidated by artists and the art scene and all of that stuff. I didn't consider myself in that. So
Artists are kind of the worst, let's be real.
Well, I mean, there is...
kidding.
I like to talk about where they got their MFA.
Well, and that was not where I was, and I'd even thought about doing those things. I resented for years that I didn't know about all this when I was in school and could have done it, Right. I was like, why didn't I know this earlier, So...
Well, something you have a lot more experience with, and that I have a little bit of experience with, is curating shows. And I'm just going to say, it's rewarding, but it's kind of a lot of work.
It's so much work. It's so much work. I always tell people now, because, when you take your commission, and people are like, oh, you're taking a commission. I'm like, yeah. Like, your art would be in your closet.
Yeah, I'm not Genie over here. Like, I have
it's
to do
a
work.
lot of work.
Yeah.
So how that came about is I had kind of decided I wanted to start doing that, and I was down at Fly Bar,
which is below us
right now. And Eric Anderson was still running it back then, before the pandemic, and he needed somebody to do the art shows there. And I said, you know what? I want to do that. And he's like, really? Do you know artists? I go, I do. And I've always wanted to do this. And so he's the one that gave me my first chance to curate.
Okay.
So my very first show was a travel photography show.
This is 2019 or maybe early 2020?
Yeah, super.
Around then.
2018 maybe?
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Wait, we've been doing it for 5 years last year. So what's that?
Yeah, 18.
Yeah. So I got like 5 of my friends who I thought took great photos and traveled a lot, and we did a travel show down there. And then my friend Greta, who was in the show, she and I decided this is fun, let's do it. So we did it together, and we curated Fly for up until the pandemic.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and
Like
it's
only
huge.
you two?
Yeah.
All their okay.
Yeah. So, and it had never really had rotating art like that, like consistently.
Mm-hmm.
So Eric let us just take it, and the shows were really good and fun. And then I got involved with the Visit Era Art Walk, and because Jesse Flo, his wife, was involved, and Giselle down at Rare Device, and then Tasha Welch, who has moved now but does Fiery Red Design. We ran the art walk just by the seat of our pants, you know, like not with funding, not with anything. And then we got vendors involved, and and then the pandemic hit, and Greta had to go back to the East Coast. Her mom is older, and so she had to go be with her mom during the pandemic. But I was just like, I want to keep it going, and
I think the pandemic really, you know, for both of us, kind of like, you know, pushed the urgency of like, oh my God, circle the wagons. Like, how do we keep our neighborhood as awesome as it's been?
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. And I also had started doing art shows over at Alamo Square Cafe, which is right by my apartment. And so they stayed open during the whole pandemic because they were a coffee shop.
Right.
So I just started flipping the shows over there. It's the only thing I had control over. And man, I started selling a lot of art out of there because people were bored and they didn't have anything to do with their money.
But also, it's like that's wonderful for you and something to do and whatever. But also those artists.
Yeah.
Keeping them.
Yeah, because at this point we had built a pretty good network of artists.
The livelihood and you know, all that.
So that kept it going, and I'm forever grateful to Nelson and Melanie who own that place for they just letting me have it. Melanie actually still helps me do it today. Like,
awesome.
She helps me with my business. So we kept it going with the cafe, and then when things started opening up again, Eric left. He moved to the East Coast eventually.
From Flybar.
Yeah.
Okay.
But he actually left Flybar and opened another place down in the Tenderloin. And I had a couple of shows over at his place down in the Tenderloin too. But it was just like slowly amassing different places. But the Flybar was our big generator. And so Annie left Minibar during the pandemic. And Aaron took over. And so I had asked
Aaron, sorry, for listeners, Aaron Kehoe, who has been on this who has been on this podcast.
Yes, she has.
Yes.
And so I had asked Annie, look, if they need any help with the art, tell them I'd be interested in helping. And she's like, you know, you can just talk to him yourself. She's like, I'm out. And I'm like, that's fair.
Yeah.
And so I emailed Aaron and I said, hey, you don't know me. This is what I do. I've shown there. It's really important. You know, love Minibar. And so she was thrilled because she didn't know that art shows came with the job. So that was a surprise to her. And she's like, I don't even know how to do this. I would love your help. So we just switched out. We do every other one. So it's not too much on either one of us.
And when did that start?
That started last year.
Oh, just in 2022.
Yeah. But yeah, and it's progressed from there. And then we just added Beanbag not that long ago. So, and now I'm kind of to capacity. And then Greta has kind of decided not to come back. So basically where we're at right now is I'm like, we actually have moved $50,000 worth of local art in 5 years.
Wow.
Which is, and when you're talking about pieces that are between like $40 and $300,
it's a lot of
art.
It's
It's not like that represents 2 pieces of art, you know?
Right.
So I was like, this is important. You know, this
like
is...
if you live in San Francisco, you've decided to, you know, put some roots down here. Why not have local artists on your wall?
100%.
It became my business model became free walls. If I wasn't paying for a gallery and or anything like that, then I could take a lower commission. And then it just became, hey, people who are willing to let me come in and do this, you do nothing. And then we were the first ones to come up with a system that you could buy it right off the label with the QR codes. And we still use our own proprietary system, which is clunky, but it works. Now you see it. But that means that no show has to be manned. So you don't have to train every single person that works at a place, or you don't have to, the bar's full and you want to buy a piece of art and you have to get the notebook out and you have to take the credit card. Like, that was the game changer.
The
and
bar
Greta,
being full at many doesn't take many people.
No, and Greta was the one who built all of that, and I would never be able to do that without
that's
her.
amazing.
So she became kind of back of the house and I was front of the house. And then now she can't do it anymore. She's just not here enough and all of that. So now I am finally launching out on my own. And
let's tell people about that if you're ready to tell people about that.
I have changed the name. It is now called Known SF.
I wondered if that's what that was.
That's the logo. Yeah. Jason Ryan in the neighborhood made the logo. And what kind of afforded me to do that too is, like, I was like stressed about how am I going to do this without Greta, because she is totally the tech admin organizing brain behind it all, and I didn't have to worry about any of that, and I liked that. But I was sitting in the fly bar, and Hannah came in and was like, you know, if you ever need any help, I see what you do in the community, and I would be happy to volunteer if you ever need any administrative help or anything.
Damn,
and I'm like, and
that's
just
awesome.
like moving out here, it's like once you decide this is what I need to do, then the things just show up. And, you know, I don't think of any of this that much differently than I think about my church growing up.
Right.
Because it's community.
Yeah.
And and to be of service is something that I
people
grew
helping
up.
people.
People helping people is just how we were raised, and it's a good part of how we were raised. And bringing that into this, like, we have such an amazing community here in this neighborhood. Amazing. Like, it's just worth protecting, you know, and it's worth, so I just realized, okay, this is what I do. I bring opportunities to other, and I also was like, you know what, I don't care if I'm not a fine artist, and I don't care if I'm ever in the fine art scene. I care about local artists. I care about opportunities. I care about giving people like me more opportunities. And I've worked with so many amazing people. And if it's not up somebody's alley, if they don't want to show in a cafe or bar, that's fine. That's fine. I don't take any offense to that. But there's a lot of people who do. So a couple of my just principles that I've had is, like, I always like to have somebody who it's their first show.
Oh.
So fun. You can never relive that feeling of the first time you see your art on a wall.
Yeah.
You can never relive the feeling of the first time a stranger buys a piece of your art.
Yeah.
You know, like, your friends will buy it all day long.
Yes.
Your family will buy it. But when a stranger just buys a piece because they like it, you're like, oh, the validation is great. So I love reliving that every show. So I always try to have at least somebody who it's their first show. I always try to have somebody, at least one person who's over 50. I'm over 50. And the reason is I did years of recruiting, and I just see the ageism everywhere, you know? So it's important to me that there's opportunity always out there. Getting someone started and keeping someone going is part of why I do this.
I love that.
Yeah, me too.
Those are really good.
So it's just all kind of happened, and now it's happening. And yeah, I'll be launching it later this year. I mean, it's building it all right now. But
I have a lot to learn from you, I'll say. Because, like I said, I've done it a couple times. I want to do it again.
Good.
I think.
Yeah, you do.
Maybe after a little while.
You do.
I think there's a lot of things I want to do.
Well, that's kind of the thing about expanding that's hard. Like, I don't think my next step is going to be trying to take over that many more venues, because it's a lot of work to come up with every single show. Like, my cafes, I leave them up for 4 months. Because it's much more passive audience, you know? Mini Bar is an art bar. People know to buy art there. Half of my house is full of art I bought at Mini Bar, you know? So, like, if you've got a place that already is identified as a place that moves art, people already know to buy it there. If you're starting from scratch, it takes about 2 to 3 shows before people start buying. It's really interesting, the psychology, like because I think people see it and they just think it's decor, but then when it changes and they go, I could have bought that. I really liked that, and then they're looking. You know, after 2 or 3, they're like, oh, it's new art. What's up? And I have people at every single venue that repeat buy out of every show.
Oh, that's awesome.
Like,
repeat customers.
Every show. Like, I just sold my first piece at Alamo Square Cafe from the show I put up, and it's a guy that's probably bought 10 pieces of art there. Like, I could tell he's like, oh, it's a new show. What do I want? You know? And that's the mentality you want. And I do, like, I will never tell an artist how much to price their work, but I do prefer working with people who have a price point that people can afford.
Yeah.
You know, that anyone, you know, like, if you see it, you can buy it, you can afford it, you know? Like, once it gets too pricey, it's, like, harder for people to make that split decision.
And I'm not going to name names. I've been to those shows. And I'm like, oh, that's super cool. Oh.
Yeah, I can't afford that. Yeah. And I'm not saying it doesn't deserve that.
As my Texan dad does say, oh, they're proud of that one. No, but affordability is accessibility, right? It's
I feel like I found my little area finally in the arts.
Yeah.
Like, and the people who want to be on this ride with me have a good time, and we have a good time doing it. And I'm not trying to be anything but that.
Fuck yeah.
You know, like, I got nothing to prove here.
I'm looking at this. This is a perfect time for you to...
Well,
Can I just share my story? I mean, seeing the Pine Box Boys, I was introduced, like I'd heard of y'all, but at your birthday at Madrone.
Okay. All right.
Just last year.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, they're fucking fun.
Oh, thank you. You know, we've got 20 years in this city,
Yeah.
you know, of doing that stuff. And, you know, so many of the things that, you know, you hear Anita talking about community, you know, I mean, that's what made it important to play music when we were, you know, living in Little Rock. When I came out here, I had a tough time getting anything going. And I had huge confidence issues. And, you know, Cosmic Eagle Factory had its little run up the ladder, you know, we were doing pretty well out there. And you know, and I just kind of thought, well, I'll just get another band going, you know.
And you were playing guitar only?
Yeah. At that time, just guitar.
Okay.
And, you know, so yeah, it took me a little while. You know, like I said, I worked at Tower Records, and you know, I would meet musicians, but you know, yeah, as far as like doing the kind of stuff I wanted to do, I wasn't finding that, and again, I didn't feel, you know, I just didn't feel like I was good enough, you know, at the time.
Yeah. It's hard to compete with that.
Yeah. And so
We were intimidated by the city, too. Yeah, when we first moved
I mean, yeah, you know, you're in a world-class city, you know.
And
I got back into school out at San Francisco State.
Yes,
I
you
did
did.
eventually finish the whole degree, you know.
Well,
and
you're only
got
3
my
hours short.
teaching credential.
To make up for
Yeah.
those 3
Yeah,
hours.
and that is a whole other story there that I'm not going to go into, although, you know, sitting there with an academic advisor and them looking at my transcripts, you know, and
Those classes we talked
and
about.
asking about those classes, you know.
Wait, just quickly, what was your degree?
In English Lit.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. I mean, but what the hell are you going to do with that, right? You
Same.
know, that is, you know, and it was,
I
and
have
that was
one
the
of
whole
those.
thing. I'm sitting there at the end as I'm finishing up, you know, my degree and going like, law school. You know, California's never suffered from a shortage of lawyers, you know, so I was like, you know, I want to be a teacher. That's what I was going to do. So I started, you know, I got into the credential program, and that's when, you know, I met folks like Kellyanne Callahan, who, you know,
Owns this bar.
Yeah, this is her, you know, her name's on the lease here, and then her boyfriend, Tim Leather, or her boyfriend at the time, Tim Leather, is still now my bass player. I met those guys through a fella in the credential program, Matty Berman. He and another fella in the neighborhood, Taryn Ramage, they had a band called Riptopolis. Before that, they were in a band called Litterbox. And they were, you know, that became like my pickup game of basketball. They invited me out. Hey, you know, we kind of need a lead guitar player. Why don't you come
For
on
gigs or?
Well, at the time, we would just go down to a rehearsal space down in Moss Street and drink a bunch of beer, and I just learned their songs.
Yeah.
But, you know, there was that thing. I was like, wow, I'm going to get to play a gig in San Francisco, you know? First one, we were over at, what is it called, New George's over in San Rafael. You know, that band got together, you know, like I said, Maddie and I were both finishing up our teaching credential when...
I love it, a teacher band.
Yeah.
Love it.
And when he finished, you know, he and his beautiful wife, Emily, they packed up and they moved up to Humboldt and then would eventually move to England, you know, where he would teach over there. But anyway, yeah, that band just kind of split up amicably. There wasn't one of those, like, you know, smashing guitar, you know, kind of band breakup things. It was like, well, we're going to go do this now.
But
so,
you had become a full-fledged member.
Yeah.
Not just a fill-in, yeah.
And, you know, I do remember we played, you know, you remember they used to close off Golden Gate and do, like, 4th of July parties out there? You know?
It's still a slow street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But back then they would just close it down on July the 4th. Everybody would have their grills out. And we played, you know, those a few years. And... But when that band, you know, split up, Tim and I were like, well, let's keep playing music together. You know, we found another drummer, another guy who lived in the neighborhood, and we started doing like real noisy, abstract. I mean, like our joke was, you know, the band was called the Zagmen. If the Zagmen were playing, nobody's getting laid tonight. You know.
It was true.
We could clear a bar. I mean, we could empty the
fun.
place out, you know. And I'd had experience playing that kind of music. I'd worked with a band called Reagan's Polyp. For a long time,
In Little Rock,
yeah,
yeah.
that was back in Little Rock. So
Noise bands, yeah.
I was definitely about noise. I was into Zorn and
That is
a
great.
lot of
I'm
that
sorry,
stuff.
Reagan's Polyp. That's
Yeah, I know.
really good.
No, they're a great band. I think there's still some
There's
of
a
their
lot
stuff
of
on
vinyl
Spotify.
out there, yeah.
Yeah.
But so when we decided, okay, we met some folks that would put on shows over at ATA, Artist Television Access,
Still
21st.
there.
On Valencia, yeah, still there.
Yep. And we started doing soundtrack to silent films.
Awesome.
Did a number of things over there. Nosferatu, The Man Who Laughs. We did Cabinet of Caligari. We did Haxan. That was a fun one to do. Let's see, Passion of Joan of Arc. I did like a solo guitar thing for that. In my mind, I was like, this is it. This is all I want to do.
Were you paid for
rest of my
that?
life. A pittance.
Stipend,
yeah. I was, and at that point, I'd started teaching. This was just like, man, this is my thing. Other people go out and play golf. I'm doing soundtracks to silent films. That's my thing.
That's amazing.
And then we started doing the Pine Box Boys on if we didn't want to go down to the rehearsal space and plug everything in and make a lot of loud noise, we would come over here. The drummer and the bass player lived here, and Dodds would throw the drummer. He would throw like a big blanket over his drums to muffle them. I'd show up with an acoustic guitar. Tim had an acoustic bass, and I just started showing him like old bluegrass tunes.
Yes.
And then
that you just already knew.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up with that stuff.
Right.
I think it's important to say here that his mom used to sing him to sleep to old British murder ballads.
Oh, that's amazing.
And they were passed down through his family.
Thanks, Mom.
Yeah.
That's fucking
she's
awesome.
She's very dark for a Christian.
With the band, I focused on showing them murder ballads mainly.
Okay.
Knoxville Girl, Silver Dagger,
Bluegrass
things
murder
like that.
ballads? Okay.
Yep.
And this was all in the next room from us right now?
Just a couple,
Or
right in the next room.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And look, I mean, it was the side project in my life.
Right. Right.
When it started. Let's see, Old Brother, Where Art Thou came out, and that soundtrack exploded. Suddenly people had an interest, in Americana in a bigger way than they'd had before. And we were getting booked, a lot.
As the Pine Box Boys?
As the Pine Box Boys.
Okay.
Yeah, like I said, nobody wanted to come out and hear the Zagmen, but, suddenly people wanted to hear the Pine Box Boys.
Right.
And this is old day Cafe du Nord, I mean, we would sell that place out, and it would be folks from here in the neighborhood, It was an easy walk over there.
Bars liked us because we had a drinking club. And at that time, too, there was a little Americana bluegrass thing going on here. There were quite a few bands.
Red Meat was one of the first local bands I ever saw when I came out here, so...
Can I ask, when about was this, roughly?
2003. Yeah, probably 2003, 2004.
Yeah, maybe, 2004.
I mean, at that time, it had been a minute or so since you moved here, but we were talking about the, really feeling like this is home and everything. But also, Cafe du Nord is such a special place.
It really was.
Walking down those red-ass stairs and everything's red, and you're just like, what is this?
And, around about that time, we started touring a lot more. I gave up my tenured teaching position.
I was going to ask about, because we haven't talked much about your day job.
Yeah. I did that, and we, like I said, we gave up I gave up the teaching job for the band to go on the road. We did a pretty solid 2 years of
I'd say between 2006 and
2009.
It was really, that's when we started going to Europe.
I was going to ask, just the country, but you, at least
Oh, yeah. But then, like in 2006, I was still, leveraging summers, spring breaks, those kind of things, and at the end of the 2006-2007 year, I was like, all right, I'm not going to get many more opportunities to do this in life. Let's give it a shot, and we all did. We we bought a '89 Ford Econoline, and off on the road we went. Everybody in bands knows the Econoline.
Oh, I totally.
That's...
Did you had windows then?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah,
Not a rapist fan.
So
Well, if y'all were touring, especially so extensively and for so long, you must have had some releases and recordings. And
There's
stuff out.
We got a bunch of records out, and just finished recording a new one. So I think it's the 6th record. But there's
now or at the time.
No, we just finished.
No, I just finished it.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
we
at the time,
haven't released it yet.
Couple of things.
Yeah, we had
out.
like 2 records out. By the time we started going on the road, we had finished Arkansas Killing Time. Stab would come very quickly, after that. Then Child of Calamity. By the time we were getting to the other records, I'd already gone back to teaching, but we were still trying to get out on the road whenever we could. Summers again, and we would still always do the Europe tour. And I never, really, it's when I got into school administration that really started to eat into, going out on the road time.
That's a different gig.
Yeah. And but that also kind of brought me back to, pay attention to what's going on in your backyard. During the pandemic, seeing all the venues close, having no place to play music, that was really hard. And look, I love sitting around and making stuff up on GarageBand, but that is a pale comparison, to really getting together with your band.
Did y'all do any streaming stuff?
We did.
Okay.
Yeah. A couple of online festivals, and some pretty fun productions, that we put together.
It's something, but
you're not getting quite that immediate connection.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tom Tierney, who owns Pops, with Spike,
Tom's been on the podcast.
Yeah.
So is Spike.
Yeah. So, Tom was one of the first ones we played, in his parklet out there. Some Alabaster. Alabaster was really good about going around and finding, parklets to play in. And, we'd come out there, we wouldn't bring a drummer with us, It would all be just kind of quiet acoustic gigs. But we were regulars at Madrone when he started, doing the carry out drinks, because we can't let this place close.
We were both lucky.
And
we were both
I'm
employed.
Thirsty,
We were both employed during the pandemic.
Yeah.
So we spent a lot of money supporting everyone in the neighborhood any way we could. And if that meant drinking a lot of cocktails, then we had to drink a lot of cocktails. It was,
take one for the team.
Our livers be damned.
Yep.
No, Madrone, and there's a million other examples. I still feel that way about these places where I guess it's ownership or protectiveness of them.
Territorialness,
Oh, absolutely.
And at some point, and this is, things that opened up, were really starting to open up again. You still, had indoors, you were still probably wearing a mask, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But Anita just one day looked at Spike's like, why don't you let Lester do a show here?
Well, no, we had started kind of talking, and shout out to Spike as well, because he's always, I've done 2 window installations there. He's, and I've done 1 show there, and we'll probably have another one this year there.
Awesome.
He is such a great supporter of arts and music, and he really runs his business in a way that, he makes a lot of money on some of the, the nights that aren't his favorite music, so that he can afford to have the days and nights that are the community stuff,
That's also just smart.
And he's a really smart business person, in my opinion, at least. And so during the pandemic, it was like, he had been talking about maybe having a residency somewhere. We were talking to Deluxe about having a residency up there, because that was like
speaking of the places
broken-hearted. Yep. But that was one of the places, and he and Meredith were going to put together a band, and they were going to do a residency up at Deluxe, and we all know what happened with that. But they were right there about to pull the trigger when all that stuff started happening. And I was like, oh, well, it'd be cool if you could do a residency at Madrone, and we had been talking to Spike, and I was like, why can't they do a residency at Madrone? And he's like, why can't he? And so he's like, why don't you just take the first Sunday of every month? Because that was the open mic Sundays.
Okay. And this was once it was fully opened, when it was like still kind of fits and starts.
It was right when it opened.
Well, remember that he was, because there was the whole issue, of musicians having to have their vaccination.
Oh yeah, we went through the whole
play.
period of you couldn't actually play in a venue unless everyone had proof of vax.
There was the time, a long time where you couldn't go into places.
Anywhere. Yeah,
you had to show.
Same thing with that, like for playing and everything, and so yeah, that just started up after the pandemic. I mean, talk about a great community thing. Like Apocalypse Sunday has really turned into such a I always say, having gigs as a band is like hosting a party that you don't have to clean up after, and all your people just come, and you don't have to buy a bunch of food. They buy their own drinks. But it is like, I never know who's going to show up, but it's always this a great mix of people from the neighborhood.
Yep.
And it's become a really lovely, people look forward to the first Sunday of every month.
It's still happening.
Oh yeah.
It's happening tomorrow. We're actually
November was our 2nd year anniversary of doing this. And yeah, the idea is, it's the last party ever, the world's gonna end.
Yes.
It was born out of the pandemic. Yes.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. With and obviously everything I do has this sort of grim overtone to it, but tongue in cheek, gallows humor, that kind of thing. And and so with Apocalypse Sunday, the whole point is actually, okay, yeah, it's the last party ever, but what, if the world doesn't end. Right, we'll come back and try it again next month.
We'll see you next month.
And what we want is for people to, enjoy one another's company as if it's the last time you're ever going to see each other.
Right.
Hence the Apocalypse Sunday toast to the end of the world, to each other, and to Hyper Cockroach of tomorrow, to whom the future belongs. Yeah. And but it's been fun, and always I'm looking for, I've steered away from the singer-songwriter thing. I want bands in there, even if they're small combos. I don't care if it's a duo, trio, whatever, but let's do something more than, there's plenty of times you can go out and hear a singer-songwriter. Let's try to make this something a little bit more. And it's been great because I've gotten to find all these marvelous musicians around the city and bring them in. I'm not, Club Deluxe, you had to be, a very vintagey type band, right?
Yeah, you had to be good.
And you had to be good. But there was the whole, you're playing blues, jump, jazz, something like that to be there, and I haven't held it to that. I'm trying to bring anything in there.
Got it.
We had JF come out and do, hip hop. I mean, punk bands, rock bands. Yeah, we had Clay, bring Strange Cities, in there. They killed. It was so much fun.
But Apocalypse Sunday is yours.
Yeah.
There's always
we always play, and then I bring a guest in.
But you curate whatever. You produce that show. Okay.
And and it's fun because that's at Madrone, and then my wife is curating art shows just a few blocks away. And
it's just really these 3 blocks have become. I used to work at a company in Portland, and when my manager would come down, I'd take him, and we were sitting over at Bar Crudo, and everybody came over. I was like, "Hey, Anita, hey," and he's like, "Where are we? Sesame Street?" I'm like, "No, I'm actually really only popular on these 3 blocks. If we go anywhere else in the city, nobody knows who I am. But on these 3 blocks, I'm wildly popular."
Sesame Street was probably 3 blocks long.
Right?
Let's be real.
I never saw it.
And that's all you. Right.
And I hope, I know people are doing this sort of thing in their neighborhoods. We just did First Fridays in North Beach.
We went out last night to First Fridays in North Beach, and it's become one of my favorite things that we do, is now we're going out to all the other activities in the city looking for other musical acts that can play at Apocalypse Sunday, and I'm looking for artists that I'm looking for venues I might want to guest curate at or stuff like that. So it's become, because another thing I'm really passionate about is we do have all of these beautiful little communities around the city, but they don't necessarily know each other. So with the art shows, like my next step is people need to know Jason Ryan in the Castro or in North Beach, or we can be moving our little local artists around in the city for more exposure. It's
and there's
wonderful.
a thing about to me, this is about survival, and not just we made it through the pandemic or that when the building up there on McAllister and Divisadero caught fire. I mean, our dear friends, my banjo picker, sax player, Guy Possum, he lived there. Our artist, Chad, who's done, his wife, who did all of our, Pine Box Boy art. I mean, she lived there, and, but there was a community here that Anita helped rally, that got everybody together and raised money, to help those folks. So it's like, get out and know your neighbors. Get out and do that stuff.
You guys have, perhaps unwittingly, but also it's been kind of through this whole recording, you've walked into what I want to wrap with. Every season on our show, we have a theme. And the theme of this season that we're in right now is We're All in It.
Mm-hmm.
Right on.
I mean, you guys both just walked right into that. I just want to know, is there anything else you want to say about that idea?
I feel like to be in it, you have to be out there. I know that, we have a lot of very introverted friends who don't get out. We have people who don't go to bars,
We also just had a pandemic, to be
Yeah, and a lot
fair.
of people didn't get over that,
Right.
And I get that. But, I look at bars as one of the fabrics of community.
Yeah.
And again, wrapping it back around to how we grew up in church, it was like, it doesn't matter where it is that your community is, just be a part of it. Just contribute and just support. Like, maybe you support it just by showing up and buying a piece of art. But I guarantee you, and we've been doing this stuff for so long, we never get mad if people don't come to shows.
No.
We just get happy when people do.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. These artists and musicians that they get upset about it. Don't get upset about anything. Just do it. Just be out there doing it. Just be a part of the fabric. Just be a part of the reason to leave your house. Right. Give other people a reason to have someone to talk to. Like, I go downstairs and eat lunch at Fly all the time because it's right downstairs. But also, I know I'll never eat lunch alone.
Right.
Like, I'm like, wow, I'm hungry. And I go down and I have a great conversation with Regina or Matt or Alan or, there's always or whoever's working, like, and Erin has said it a million times about Minibar. Like, she's lived in a lot of neighborhoods. She's like, there's not a neighborhood like this. Like, we really are invested in each other. And we look out for each other. Tomorrow, Apocalypse Sunday is going to be dedicated to Markham Sherwood, who just passed away on Christmas Day, and a very good friend and part of this community. And yeah, it's going to be packed. I know it is, because there are so many people in this neighborhood who genuinely care about each other. Yeah. That's what happens when you're in it.
And there's a time in life, you never know when you need your neighbors to make a casserole for you.
Yeah.
Right? And if you don't know your neighbors, nobody's going to make you a casserole.
That was Anita Beshirs and Lester Raww, our Valentine's 2024 couple. On our next podcast, we'll meet Denise Coleman and Doug Stiles from Huckleberry Youth. Episode 10 drops next Tuesday, wherever you get podcasts. Music for Storied San Francisco was produced, performed, and curated by Otis McDonald. Aaron Lim of Bitch Talk Podcast is our contributing producer. And the show is produced and hosted by me, Jeff Hunt. Now in our 6th season, we have more than 200 episodes available on our website, storiedsf.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're able to, please rate and review the show, and drop us a line at storiedsf@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Keep rejecting those silly doom loop narratives about our city. Stay wacky, weird, healthy, and creative. And we'll see you next time on Storied San Francisco. We acknowledge and respect the first humans of the unceded land we call San Francisco, the Ramaytush Ohlone. We condemn the genocide of these and other tribes across the Western Hemisphere. We honor their legacy and history, and we support rematriation and sovereignty efforts.
This podcast is a proud member of the BFF.FM podcast network. Learn more at podcasts.bff.fm.
BFF.FM, best frequencies forever.